The John Lebang Show has been known to make people laugh, sing, think, scream, throw things in rage, and generally lose their minds. Listener discretion is advised.
Worldwide and out to the greater universe, you're listening to the John Lebang Show.
We had a lot of hoopla in Michigan over the past weekend where we had, protesters going up to Lansing because, well, they're unhappy with being out of work and they want to work during a pandemic which some people believe is real, some people believe is a hoax, and then there are other people that think it's being used for something far more nefarious. But our residents here in Michigan who are upset because they're out of work right now or not able to go anywhere because the governor has shut down a good portion of the economy. Now, we can't blame her for everything because it's really off the recommendations of the White House for the most part. I mean, she's taken it to the extreme, but that's because the White House itself is allowing the governors, rightfully so, mind you, allowing the governors to handle their state. I like that idea. I hear many people complaining that the Trump administration isn't doing enough in each state. And I'm like, I'm glad for that. But on the other hand, he's allowing certain states to be test markets for stricter measures for not only the current pandemic, but for future pandemics. So I've heard the arguments, and you see it all over the social media, who's right about the lockdown here in Michigan in particular. People, again, are protesting or were protesting. They kind of shut down some streets in Lansing. People who weren't even social distancing or wearing masks at these protests. You can express your disapproval with the government, but you might want to take certain precautions when doing things like that, like gatherings in such a large number. You might want to take personal protection, maybe not even for you, but just in case you're carrying any kind of bug at this point. You think those people would be prudent enough to wear masks, and for the most part, I didn't see that. Now, there's a group of people that don't believe this is a big deal. And it hasn't turned out to be the numbers that the CDC and all the government officials have been touting since the very beginning. And let's be honest, Governor Whitless up there in Lansing, she has made mistake after mistake. She has been late to the game on practically every step she's taken when it relates to COVID-19 and the lockdown. I was criticizing her months ago when the first cases reached the U.S. And she didn't take appropriate actions then. She waited until the other governors, especially the Ohio governor, made decisions. She pretty much followed his footsteps and then kicked it up a notch a little bit. Took away a little more freedom, but followed in the same footsteps, which were generally the recommendations of the federal government. And you wonder who's right and wrong. You know, there's the big argument here in Michigan. Who's right and wrong in this lockdown and with the protest? Are the protesters right? Should they be able to get back to work? That's debatable. A lot of them are eligible for unemployment. So the money issue shouldn't be as big of a deal. You just got to check as well. So if it's strictly on money, I don't see why you guys are making a big hubbub about it, because you got to check. Now, if you're bored, and that's where I'm seeing the majority of the problem with the citizens. See, the governor, personally, this is something I would have done if I was the governor. Once the first case reached the United States, I would have made it pretty hard to get into the state of Michigan or any other state. The only things that would have been let in to the state of Michigan are current residents and truckers who are carrying essential supplies to like grocery stores and whatever. Anybody, and this is incredible that you can still travel from state to state through the rules of Governor Whitmer. So you can go down to Ohio and then come back to the state of Michigan. But you can't travel from residence to residence inside the state. Now that's bass-ackwards. You shouldn't have been able to travel into the state of Michigan if you were not a resident or a trucker, an essential trucker, that is. When this all first hit the shores of the U.S., that should have been immediate action. You didn't have to shut down the inner parts of the state. You could have just shut down travel from state to state. That would have slowed the spread from state to state immensely. But very few governors took those early actions to do such a thing. In fact, I don't think any governor in the country did that. But that was the first mistake on the governor's side. On the president's side, or the federal government, their mistake was letting those people who were on cruise ships and who were abroad back into the country, who were carrying the virus. Maybe I'm a little harsh like that, but if you're out in the world when a pandemic hits, tough crap, you're stuck. You're stuck. Because we have a whole country of people to protect. And it's in the Constitution, ladies and gentlemen. It's in the Constitution. You just overlook that. It's part of the makeup of this country. Now, it goes back to the Declaration of Independence, but that is the stepping stone to the Constitution. And it says right there in the Declaration of Independence, the government has to promote the general welfare. That is their job. They're not supposed to give us welfare. They're supposed to promote the general welfare. Well, that would have been one thing that the governors, all of the governors, could have done, is just lock down their state from interstate travel. Like in Washington or in New York, they should have made it impossible to even leave the state because they were some of the early states involved. But our governor here in Michigan, while we watched months of stuff going on in China, Europe was falling apart, especially like Italy and Spain. It hadn't reached Michigan yet, officially. You see, we have to go by the official numbers. We can't just go on, oh, I had something in November and it was probably that. We don't know, okay? We don't know. And this speculation that is taking place all over the place, making up numbers to make themselves feel better, to make the numbers look a lot smaller of the people infected or the people who are dying from infection. You hear that, 0.2%, point whatever. Those are all on made up numbers that nobody can prove whatsoever. So you got to go by the official numbers, whether you like them or not. And we all know that there are people who got infected. Right? This is common sense, ladies and gentlemen. There are people who are infected with COVID-19, yet show no symptoms. They're just a carrier. So you people that went to that protest in Lansing, not wearing a mask, not social distancing, and I'm not a fan of the social distancing. You see, they're changing society right before our eyes, folks. Right before our eyes. The entire makeup of how we work here in the country has been changed in a matter of months. But for the protesters who may have some legitimate concerns, like why can't we garden right now in the state of Michigan? Why are no garden centers available for us to pick up supplies at? You can still pick up supplies of paint at Sherwin-Williams. Now, you can't go to the Home Depots or whatever, but you can go to SW. Because the governor, in her infinite wisdom, decided that only some of the paint departments must shut down. And that was related to the box stores. Maybe that was to keep some businesses open. Because I see how they've kept businesses open. The most prudent thing would have been, again, this is something that goes across the spectrum of political figures and governors and the federal government. Why didn't they just shut the country down entirely for 3 weeks? We'd be done by now. If we were worried about a 14-day incubation period, we just shut everything down, but we had this partial shutdown. See, we're not in full shutdown, ladies and gentlemen. There are plenty of people who are still working in these so-called essential industries. Now, those are debatable as well. What's essential and what's not essential. And that is dictated by each state's governor, and our governor here, Whitless, up in Lansing, has decided some paint departments, like in the big box stores, must be closed. Those gardening centers must be closed. You can't have seeds. You can't get dirt. You can't get mulch. But you can still get that gallon of paint if you go over to an actual paint selling company instead of the big box stores. Now, I know that makes no sense. Most of the citizens in the state make no sense. So the governor not only has screwed this up from the beginning, but every one of her dictatorial powers have been arbitrary. Just, what nilly-willy picking things. As we're just randomly riffing here tonight. Thank you for joining me. I'll be right back.
Hey, Uncle Shady, where are they going? Hey, you, get back here. The John Lebang Show will be right back. Are you in need of commercial or residential window cleaning? Do you need your office cleaned? Maybe custodial work? How about some gutter cleaning? If you do, then call Pane and the Glass. For a beautiful shine that's crystal clear, call Pane and the Glass. You can find them on Facebook at Pane and the Glass. You're listening to the John Lebang Show.
It's better than an eye-reader convention.
So we know that Governor Whitmer here in Michigan, as well as many other governors, handled most of this COVID-19 terribly. A lot of blame can go to the federal government as well. And didn't we have an interesting revelation yesterday? You know, you're hearing people talk this up, by the way, like it's some big deal, right? Trump suspends immigration.
Fake news.
Excuse me.
Fake news.
Are any of you thinking, who are out there touting this?
Fake news.
Just wanted to.
Fake news.
The country's locked down from travel, isn't it? Isn't the country locked down from travel? How is there any immigration at the moment? That should have been a given as soon as it was locked down. But now we have to have another decree saying that we're locking down immigration. Were we letting people in from other countries? You know we were, by the way. That was a rhetorical question, but we're letting people in up until yesterday into the country when there is a worldwide pandemic. So no wonder people are questioning how severe this pandemic is. Because the government reaction has been nilly-willy. Didn't take it very serious in the beginning. They slowly shut down parts of travel. The people on the left there who thinking Trump didn't do anything, if we go back, I reported it. Trump shut down travel to China, then to Europe, then all over. Okay? While there was opposition. I mean, he was called the racist for doing it. So when we put all this together, and we you know, almost everybody's at fault here. Here, I'm in a state of Michigan. We had months of leeway on this. We saw what was going on with China, Europe, Iran, all these other. It didn't hit Michigan till late in the game. Yet our governor waited and waited and waited, couldn't make a decision on her own. She had to see what other governors were doing around her. And we're the fifth highest count of COVID cases in the country, third in deaths. So right there, Governor Whitmer, you failed. You failed at what you were doing. You see, if you succeeded, we wouldn't be fifth in cases or third in deaths. But let's not put all the blame on Governor Whitmer, because the people who downplayed this in this state in particular, and I can tell you when the orders came to shut some things down, the stay-home orders happened, people didn't stay home. When they were out of work, you know what they did? They ran out to the big box stores or the paint stores, anything that was left open to keep themselves occupied, because they couldn't do the right thing. The right thing, my humble opinion, and who am I, the right thing would have been to shelter in place for a couple weeks just to protect not only yourself, but other people. Because we are responsible for other people, and if we're sick, we shouldn't be going out to the world. And with something like this, so potent, this virus, it's so potent. It transmits from person to person so easily. If we would have just shut it all down for 3 weeks, the government, the people, everybody, we might be past this already. But I made a plea. I made a plea with my fellow Americans way back before the government was shutting things down all over. Certain places had already did their beginnings of the shutdown, but this wasn't something that was across the country like it is today. And I made a plea. It was a Facebook post asking my fellow Americans to take a couple weeks off Don't go out there. Don't give the governors the opportunity to become dictators. And it's exactly what I feared. My fellow Americans, and we're going to focus on the Detroiters here, people in Michigan, they didn't stay home. They didn't listen. They still ran out here, there, everywhere. Anywhere they possibly could. We became the hot spot. In my county, on top of it, of Michigan, we're the hot spot, or we were the hot spot of Michigan. We had all the early cases. The first cases were here in my county. And this was the county that the most, I've seen it. I talked to people who would come into my place of business, which again, I'm still an essential worker. Come in, no protection, nothing, thinking nothing's different. They just thought of it as a vacation. They didn't take it seriously. And I know there's still a lot of people not taking this seriously because they tout numbers they can't prove. They read an article somewhere or they got an opinion piece from some person who said there's so many people infected. And I'm not doubting, ladies and gentlemen, that there are people that are infected, that carry the virus, that are not being reported. Hell, if I had it, I wouldn't tell anybody either. I would just stay home, though. And that's what I've been doing for some weeks now. And I can understand the frustration of my fellow Michiganders who want to get out of their house. But dudes, people, this is partially your fault. You didn't stay home when you were asked to. You see, it goes back to that part in the Declaration of Independence. The government has to do the due diligence for your general welfare. Now, we can debate the numbers of COVID, but let's not poo-poo the fact that a lot of us stayed home, and that may be contributing to the lower numbers. Right? These people who don't want to believe the numbers, who downplayed this whole thing, who even criticized me, friends of mine, who I thought actually had a brain, but friends of mine, who when I asked, I said, do not go out for the next couple of weeks. Don't give the government a reason to crack down. I got lambasted because they were claiming that I was just doing whatever the government. No. I was telling. See, there's three kinds of people in this COVID. Basically, three kinds of people. You have the people completely scared to death of the virus. You have the people who think it's a hoax, don't believe it. And then there are people in the middle here who aren't part of the dialectic, who don't get involved in the two-party system like everybody else does out there, who won't jump on either side of the argument, who will just sit there and look at it and run numbers and go, okay, you know what the best thing is? Since we don't know, since it's hard to tell what's true, what's not true, sounds like it's really, especially after watching what happened in Italy, you know what? The third people said, we're not scared of this virus. We're probably more scared of what the government response was going to be and the people's reaction. And let me tell you, those third people were pretty right on. Those people who said, you know what, I'm going to, it's a new saying I hope to, use from now on. Prepare and be aware. That is what that third group did. They may not have been terrified of the virus, but they were smart enough to prepare before it all calmed down. A lot of my listeners were right along that lines. A lot of you who have been listening for a long time were already prepared for this. So when this came all down, you weren't the one running out to get the TP or the food stores or whatever. You had that covered before it all came down. You were prepared, and you were aware. And that's going to be a new motto here. Prepare and be aware. Because I can tell you, our Governor Whitless Gretchen, not only was unprepared, and she, as a government official, had about 2 months from the early cases in Wuhan to when it came here. A week or two maybe off, but that's plenty of time for anybody who knows how to prepare and who is aware to be ready for this. But on the other hand, all those people that are clamoring to get back to their... I know why it is. They're bored and they're broke. They're bored and they're broke. They didn't prepare and they weren't aware. They want the country to just every day run the same way. And if their routine is disrupted, that's their whole life is disrupted. So they want to get back to work because they weren't prepared for anything. They weren't prepared for a long emergency. What if this happened to be some kind of EMP, folks, versus a virus? What if, let's say, China doesn't unleash a virus on us, they unleash a host of EMPs and shuts down the power grid? You ain't going to work then either. And the government didn't have time to warn you on that one either. So you not being prepared and you not being aware that that possibly could happen is your fault. So when you boil it all down here in Michigan, you have the governor who's at fault and the people who were unprepared and unaware, didn't care, blew this off, considered it a hoax, didn't believe the numbers. They're also at fault at why Michigan is 5th. That's number 5. 5th in the state in the states in cases and 3rd in deaths. The governor and all the people who didn't listen. Those are the two groups that are at fault. The governor being her team and everything. And she didn't, let me just say, she wasn't ready for this, and I don't think she even cared. In fact, although I heard Guy Gordon, a local radio TV guy, defend her the other day when somebody accused her of, well, let's just say, putting the screw on the people to affect the election. Well, notice the tougher lockdowns are in more of the Democratic states. That's all I'm saying. And the economy collapsing was well, let's just say it was a combination of things. And everybody who didn't pay attention, including the governors, including the people in the federal government, and including the citizenry, when we were telling you here, and I know most people don't tune in to the show. Nobody gives me the credit, and that's fine. That's fine. I see you sharing other videos saying the exact same thing I did, although I know I said it 6 weeks earlier. Seen that guy with the Vic video. Maybe we'll talk about that later. All you are sharing, he's got millions of views. Excuse me. Most of you don't even know the guy. And the people who do know me, if you were ignoring me this whole time, you didn't know I told you that. You didn't know I said that when it all came down. The dude was late. But maybe that's the thing with everybody. They prefer the crisis management model instead of the preparation model. We'll be right back, folks. Stay tuned.
Don't move a muscle.
The John Lebang Show will be right back.
With lots of fun and excitement. Yes!
Jim's Tuxedo and Menswear is your one-stop shop for tuxedos and men's quality suits. We go the extra mile to make sure your tux or suit is the perfect fit. Our huge selection is second to none in the state.
Looking good.
Outstanding customer service.
And we're located on Dix Toledo in Southgate. Call today, 734-285-3253.
Jim's Tuxedo and Menswear is the place to be.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to Jim's Tuxedos and Menswear.
You know I had to come to the best.
That's right.
Hey, man, it's at the bottom of the hour, man. Do you know where your kids are, man?
If you want to contact the John Lebang Show, feel free to send an email to jlebang@live.com. And if you're on Twitter, look him up at John Lebang. And don't forget to go to his Facebook page at The John Lebang Show. Banger. Now here's John.
I gotten off the numbers weeks ago because it was only a point of argument because of the people who, downplay the numbers. And if you talk about the numbers, they come in with all these imaginary, this person or this study and this, that, all give some kind of percentage number of people who are not being reported, who are not taking part in reporting themselves, and these people are just willy-nilly throwing numbers around they can't prove. We all know that there are going to be people who are infected who don't get counted in the numbers. That's easy. We all know that. People aren't going to go see the doctor, especially now. They've got us all afraid to go to the doctors. They've all got us afraid to go to the hospitals, although we see reports at certain hospitals there's nothing. I even heard there's layoffs going on at Beaumont here in Michigan while all this is happening. They're blaming COVID, mind you. But is it because they're overrun? Well, I don't think so. It's because most of their hospitals, nobody's using their insurance right now. Who'd want to go to the hospital? Who wants to go to the doctors right now during all this? Because how easy it is to catch COVID, you could just show up at the emergency room even if you don't have COVID, broken leg or whatever. And I know people who have broken their feet during this. And they told me the hospital was bare. Now I know in my area there are specific hospitals dedicated to the COVID and they send people to them. So the hospital around the block from you, if it's not designated a COVID-19 hospital, it's probably going to be dead. Because most people don't know which hospital is which. They think all the hospitals are overrun. But that's simply not the case. But the downplayers who are now going, it's not as bad. It's not as bad as you said it was. Okay. It's really nice to believe that. Except you leave out one specific thing. And that's because probably you, the downplayer, have not followed the recommendations. But there are a whole lot of people that have followed the recommendations. And if you don't think that had a specific effect on the number of people going to the hospital, getting sick, being recorded in the official numbers, you're mistaken. You can't see 2 feet in front of your face. Because for sure those measures have worked. Whether you liked them or not. And I don't like some of the measures that have been taken. But to deny the fact that those measures have kept the numbers down means you're no different than the person who's claiming some kind of political point of view in any other thing. You don't want to see 2 feet in front of your face. You don't want to see logic. You only want to exonerate your opinion, things that boast your side of things. Whether it's true or not, all the other facts don't matter. And it's unfortunate because in this, the third group that I was talking about, Not only did we sit back, we were ready. In fact, many of us, including yours truly, our lives haven't changed a whole lot. Not like other people's. But that's because we were prepared and we were aware of the situation. We didn't let us run us over. We saw the train coming way back in January. And we got ready for it. So when it all came down here, and trust me, folks, any listener of the John Lebang Show that has spent any time this year, just this year, knows we were telling you to prepare for this way back in January. We're no prophet. We didn't know if it was going to make it to the shores. Well, we did. Because we told you they were going to let it in. We told you that. You know how much criticism I got? On that particular statement? They wanted it to get here. They let it in the country. People on both sides of the aisle, if you hate Trump, you're going to start blaming Trump over that. Oh, you're right. And the people who are big Trump supporters, who haven't waned, because there's a lot of us that have waned on the old Trumpster. Because, I mean, he just signed a $6.2 trillion stimulus. And look at this. Speaking of that, here we go again, folks. And those people who are touting $2.2 trillion, go watch the signing. And Trump himself says $6.2 trillion. The media's been lying to you. The politicians have been lying to you. All you have to do is go watch the video of the day he signed that damn bill. And in there, $6.2 trillion, he says. Yet that's not enough, because corporations have been jumping into the small business loans there. And remember, folks, you're getting a rebate. That $1,200 or whatever derivative of that you got, that $1,200 is just a rebate on next year's tax return. So they really didn't give you any of that $6.2 trillion. And where did that all go? Well, there's a lot of places it went, but it didn't go to your pocket, ladies and gentlemen. And now that wasn't enough. So they have to do another, $400 and some billion dollar bill? $400 billion. They just sent $6.2 trillion somewhere. $6.2 trillion somewhere. And they need another bill. What is this, phase 3 now? We always have these phases. It sounds cool, right? Phase 1, phase 2. Makes you feel like something is happening. Like we're having phase 1 of the reopening of the country. Do you ever think the country's going to be what you knew of it just 3 months ago, 4 months ago? You're crazy. I hate to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it's not going to be the same. You can go to the grocery store right now and know it's not the same. And did you notice, folks? I mean, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist here, but have you noticed how quickly all these plexiglass little things have popped up all over? How did they manufacture them when we were down as a country, right? Just want you to think, how did these things get manufactured for specific stores? And then do you know how many Kroger stores there are? And these things are in party stores now. You don't think this was something that they had planned? Long time ago they were ready for? Remember we talked about Event 302 or 201, I'm sorry? Do you remember that? They knew exactly, because of the event simulation, they knew exactly what to do, at what times to do it, when to implement it. You see, the country was going to change. They were going to use this event. They were just waiting on it. Some people would say they unleashed it. But regardless of that fact, they used this quote-unquote pandemic to push through a bunch of things that they normally couldn't do during a normal time period. It's the Rahm Emanuel playbook. You take advantage of a crisis to get things done you couldn't do any other time. Now, would you believe that, ladies and gentlemen? Well, we can have some proof. We have some proof. Do you think a $6.2 trillion deficit adding bill would have been signed at any other time during the Trump administration? He was against that, folks. Yet he signed the bill. He signed 6.2, and he looked quite disheveled that day. In fact, we've been covering the presidential seal and what's been going on with the president for, well, couple 4 weeks now. And we're going to have, which we didn't know we were going to do, but we have another report. This one's the most shocking of them all, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully that'll be up at some point today. After the show, we're going to work on it. And boy, have I found out some shocking revelations. Just on the presidential seal and the flag. It's amazing what you can glean if you just do some work. That goes back to the people who are touting numbers they don't do any work on. They read an opinion piece. And I have a friend who I actually liked for a long time until they lambasted me for telling people, do us all a favor and stay home so the government wouldn't impose things on us. Who was right in all that? If you're listening out there, my friend, what actually happened? People didn't listen, and the dictatorial powers boiled to the top. You don't give me credit for being right, do you? You don't get credit when you get something right. Now, you get something wrong, people will lambaste the living crap out of you. But they tend to ignore you when you are proven right. And it's all because, and I'm speaking to my friend as I'm speaking to all of you, because hopefully they listen, but I can guarantee you they're not going to listen. They don't listen. But the reason the dictatorial powers took place was because the people didn't follow the recommendations. They were not edicts at that time. They were recommendations. And the people didn't follow it. They didn't follow it. So it was the people who gave the government the authority to crack down. Because they couldn't be adults. You see, an adult will weigh a situation, a real adult, not somebody who's of the age of an adult, because there's still plenty of them that are children. You can see it on the social medias, how people act. An adult doesn't color their hair purple, green, blue, or orange, or whatever. An adult takes a situation, applies reason to it, and makes for the best possible outcome they can within their circumstances. But nobody, a vast majority of people, lots of them, didn't heed the recommendations. So then they became edicts because the people cannot control themselves. See, this has been a great experiment on the concept of freedom. Freedom doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want. Freedom means you're a responsible human being. You take responsibility for your actions. And you think going up to protest a governor who wasn't going to listen to you, she just told you on the Monday to go F yourselves. She wasn't going to listen to you. You know why she wasn't going to listen to you? Because you didn't listen originally. You didn't hear it out. So because you didn't hear it out, you gave her the authority. You don't like to hear that. But it was the fools out there who pretend to be adults, but they're not. It's the fools out there that give these governments the reason to crack down, the reason to do things. Because a responsible, freedom-loving American would have stayed home for a couple weeks just because it was prudent to do so. We'll be right back, folks.
Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
Because the John Lebang Show will be right back.
After this. That's guaranteed. Yes. Absolute Skin and Body Care, located in Livonia, Michigan. If you're in need of laser hair removal, skin care, laser tattoo removal, or laser hair regrowth, call Absolute Skin and Body Care. They're located at 37625 Ann Arbor Road, Suite 105 in Livonia, Michigan. Their phone number is 248-533-0448. Absolute Skin and Body Care. Give them a call. You're listening to the John Lebang Show. It's huge. Now I got to tweet about it.
Now, if any of you are still here after some adult to adult talk in those first three segments, because I know I'm going to get a lot of people from Michigan in particular who are going to get rubbed the wrong way if they listen, because they're listening to other people. There's a guy who did a video, Vic, dropping F-bombs. He's mad, right? He's just outraged. He was in his car doing some kind of vlog. Got a couple million views, maybe even a little bit more. And it's everything the guy said. Everything the guy said I had told you 6 weeks earlier when it happened. But you see, most people wait to find out. Oh, see, you don't have any forward thinking. And I'm not saying you, the listener, but people don't have any forward thinking. So this guy, Vic, he does this video. It's a giant rant. F-bomb this, F-bomb that. Screw the government. And we got screwed, blah, 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 blah. No, duh. It took you 6 weeks to find that out. It took you all this time to find that out. And then you see all these people sharing it and liking it because it took them just as long to find out. See, they're part of the problem, these people. It's too late. By the time this guy had his video, it was too late to stop. But everybody was happy to, he even said in there, he was happy to take the free money. He thinks that money's his, by the way, that we pay taxes. This guy doesn't even have the slightest clue on how this country works. Those taxes are to pay back the debt that we have accumulated for over 100 years to the Federal Reserve System. That money isn't going back to you. You were sold down the road 100 years ago, and the selling keeps getting worse. This latest package, the stimulus package, is just the latest version of screwing you. Eventually, the debt's going to be so high that nobody's going to be allowed to own anything. Oh, that can't happen, John. That's because you don't see in the future. You don't see where this all leads to, folks. This doesn't lead to some rosy utopia for America. The debt doesn't. We owe so much money. We owe more money than there's money out there to pay back. Do you understand that, folks? For every dollar we borrow, we got to pay back dollar and some interest for most of this debt. Now, the recent debt, because it's the interest rate's so low, it's kind of like free money. But notice they're not passing the freedom on to you, folks. You have to take a loan You have to take a loan to get some of that money that they made available, that they borrowed at zero interest or really low interest, but you're still going to have to pay a much higher interest rate. Well, that doesn't bail anybody out. And it took guys like Vic. Vic, I'm not picking on you, bro, but you're late to the game. Anybody who's sharing your video is late to the game. You can't get mad after the fact. After they sold you and put it into writing and the president signed it all, you can't get mad about it. It's done. Deal with it. Look at Obamacare. That's a perfect example. We can't get rid of that thing. Once it's there, it's done. You have to stop it before it happens. That's what I was trying to do with telling everybody, just stay home for 3 weeks. Stay home for those 3 weeks. We'd be done by now. And the governor wouldn't had the opportunity to impose all her dictatorial edicts on us. Because you wouldn't have gave her the opportunity to do it. But you were late to the game. And many of you are not even playing the same game. And it's unfortunate. Because you're selling the country down the river. By not being prudent, not being prepared and aware. And I want to tell you, folks, because this has been going around and it's slowly leaking out, and I think eventually we're going to get the truth on this because they're going to want to go to war eventually. Because that's where this is all probably leading, folks. We're going to find out that this was a bioweapon eventually. In fact, it acts a hell of a lot like a bioweapon. You really believe that some bat gave somebody something and then it spread? No. Look at how the Chinese, and all of you touting the Chinese numbers, it boggles my mind. Again, from the very beginning, I was telling you can't believe the Chinese government, you can't believe our government, and you can't believe the malpractice media. But whatever. The Chinese numbers were so low, right? They have 3,000 or 4,000 deaths. I don't know anymore. It's a blur, right? Because so much information has been thrown at us. So much to almost cloud. You ever hear the fog of war? That's in information terms, that's what we're under right now. There's so much information on this side and then to the contrary that we can't make heads or tails. And depending on your viewpoint, you're going to believe the stuff that supports your opinion versus what might actually be true. Because we're so hard in our opinions that we can't accept anything that might be to the contrary, that might give us more perspective on the situation. And if there's anything we need right now, it's perspective. But let's just say down the line, they call it, they let it out, because it's slowly, if you've been paying attention, slowly, teeny little bit, it's been trickling out. Seen somebody post something the other day, yesterday, mind you, everything I had brought to your attention 6-7 weeks ago. And I'd mentioned, I had to make a comment because I'm like, you're late to the game. We already talked about this. And they're like, well, not everybody listens to your show. Right. But you'll listen to the Vic guy who's late to the game. I'm no prophet, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not some magical being that can conjure up they can conjure up images of the future. I can't do that. I just know how things go. I'm prepared and I'm aware. Just like you should be. You should be prepared for all eventualities. Because I'm telling you, although they're talking about opening up the economy, notice it's going to be very gradual. And I'm telling you that don't be certain if we don't have this second wave that they're talking about. They're warning us on the second wave. Because they know it's going to happen. They're planning for it to happen, ladies and gentlemen. Some would say they're going to allow it to happen. Maybe they haven't reached the death count they needed to get to. Because all their measures actually, maybe they didn't think the American people would respond the way that, I don't know. See, there's so much in this cloud of war that I was talking about just a moment ago that we don't know any actual reality anymore if you're following the mainstream media. That's why I've stepped away. Notice I've been covering things outside of the media, again, like I normally do. Because whatever the truth is, whatever it is, it's probably a little of everything, and you could probably find the truth somewhere in there. But it's the numbers, by the downplayers, the people who are downplaying all this, you're not right, okay? The people that are frightened to death over this, you're not right either. We don't know the full facts about this. We only know the information that they are feeding us. And the best we can do is call BS when we think there's BS. Like what's going on in the state of Michigan. People protesting the governor, even though the people, if they would have followed the recommendations early on, the governor would have never been able to impose those dictatorial powers. And then you wouldn't have had to protest. But again, it goes along the Hegelian lines there. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem is you didn't want to stay home. The reaction from the government was to lock you down then. So what are you going to... Your solution is to protest, because that's all you got. And she didn't listen, did she? She ain't going to listen. You guys don't understand that. Protesting is such an outdated form of dissent. It's mind-boggling that anybody does it anymore. Because the politicians do not listen to protests. They don't. Remember all those Tea Party protests we had? Obama and all that. Didn't listen to that. You had to literally change out the government. And what did that actually do? When you threw all those Republicans in there, did that get rid of that Obamacare like you wanted? Didn't do it, did it? You can't wait till something is implemented to worry about it. You have to be a forward thinker. And unfortunately, the country is filled with people who would rather live under some form of crisis management. Day to day, oops, I won't see what's going to come down the road. I won't plan for it. And then we end up in situations like we are now, where we have a bunch of people upset because they're out of work, but they didn't heed the warning, so the governor went ahead and did dictatorial powers, even though she was stupid and didn't get it right in the first place, and didn't lock the state down from outside travel. That would have been the first thing I would have done. If you're from Kentucky visiting family, you're not coming in. If you're from New York visiting family, you're not coming in. That should have been it. We might have been past all this. That curve that they're talking about, all that did, ladies and gentlemen, and the friend of mine who criticized me a few weeks ago, that curve, all it did was stretch out the deaths. And you understand why that happened. She didn't understand why that happened. So I'm going to explain it to you. The medical system was unprepared for this, just like the government was unprepared, just like most of the citizenry was unprepared for something like this. All those billions, if not trillions of dollars cycling through, and they couldn't have a bunch of masks and suits ready in waiting for their people. They didn't have enough ventilators because they weren't prepared for something like this. But we can tell you they were. There were people who knew about this. There were plenty of people, Bill Gates and his foundation, and people who were at the Event 201 simulation. All those people knew exactly what was going to happen. And notice who's come to the forefront, Mr. Bill Gates and all this. Feel free to go to our website, www.jalebang.com, and until the vibrations of my vocal cords reach your ears again, I'm John Lebang. I'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in.
T-minus 10, 9, 8,
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff. Tune in again next week. Same time, same space,